They dragged me by my arm while I begged them to stop. My pregnant belly bumped against the door as they shoved me out. The entire neighborhood stood watching as my mother-in-law screamed, "Get out, you filthy leech!" I had nowhere to go, no money, no husband, but what they didn't know would destroy them. If you've ever been treated like you're worthless, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button right now because what happens next will give you chills. These people thought they could throw away a pregnant woman like trash. They had no idea who they were messing with. Let me tell you exactly how their world came crashing down. My name is Jenny, and 2 years ago, I married the love of my life. His name is Ethan. We met in college during our final year. He was quiet, kind, and had this gentle way about him that made me feel safe. We fell in love over coffee dates and late-night study sessions. Our wedding was simple, just close family and friends. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just pure love. After we got married, Ethan told me we'd be living with his parents for a while until we found our own place. I didn't mind. I actually thought it would be nice to bond with his family. I come from a humble background. My parents run a small shop in another city, and they worked so hard to give me a good education. I was raised to be respectful, to work hard, and to always be kind. So when I moved into the Williams estate, I was ready to be the perfect daughter-in-law. But from day one, I knew something was wrong. Patricia, my mother-in-law, looked at me like I was dirt on her expensive carpet. Gregory, my father-in-law, barely acknowledged my existence, and Melissa, Ethan's sister, made it her personal mission to remind me daily that I didn't belong. They made comments about my clothes, my background, the way I spoke. Patricia would introduce me to her friends as Ethan's wife, with this tone that made it sound like an embarrassment. They treated me like a servant. Cooking, cleaning, running errands. I did it all because I thought maybe, just maybe, if I worked hard enough, they'd accept me. Ethan worked long hours at what I thought was the family company. He'd come home exhausted, and I never wanted to burden him with complaints about his family. He loved them, and I loved him, so I kept quiet. Besides, I was 6 months pregnant with our first child, and I wanted peace. I wanted our baby to come into a loving home. Then, everything changed. Ethan got called away on an urgent business trip overseas. He said it would be about a month, maybe less. He promised to video call every day, kissed my belly, and told our baby to be good for mommy. I watched him leave with this uneasy feeling in my chest, but I pushed it away. He'd be back soon. The moment Ethan left, the mask came off. Patricia stopped pretending to be civil. Melissa became openly cruel. They started making horrible comments about the baby, saying things like, "Let's hope it doesn't inherit her looks," or "Poor child, stuck with a mother like that." I tried to ignore it, tried to stay strong for my baby. Then came the day that changed everything. I was cleaning the living room, trying to be careful around Patricia's expensive decorations. My belly was getting bigger, making it harder to move around. I reached up to dust a high shelf, and my hand accidentally knocked over a crystal vase. It fell and shattered into 1,000 pieces on the marble floor. The sound brought Patricia running. Her face turned bright red when she saw the broken vase. "Do you know how much that cost?" she screamed. "You clumsy, worthless girl!" Melissa appeared from nowhere, adding fuel to the fire. "She did it on purpose. She's always been jealous of what we have. I tried to apologize, tried to explain it was an accident, but they wouldn't listen." That's when Patricia said the words that still echo in my mind. "You trapped my son with that pregnancy. You're nothing but a gold digger, and I want you out of my house." I felt my blood run cold. "What? No, please, I love Ethan. I would never—" Gregory appeared, his face stern. "Ethan is too good for someone like you. We all know you got pregnant on purpose to secure your place in this family. Well, it's not going to work." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These people actually thought I was some kind of scheming villain. Me, the girl who grew up helping her parents in their tiny shop, who never cared about money or status, who fell in love with Ethan before I even knew his last name. But they didn't care about the truth. Patricia's voice was ice cold when she said, "Pack your things and get out." Now, I begged. I actually got on my knees and begged, "Please, I'm 6 months pregnant." I have nowhere to go. Just let me stay until Ethan comes back." Melissa laughed. Actually laughed. "That's not our problem. You should have thought about that before you trapped our brother." Before I could say another word, Melissa grabbed my arm and started pulling me toward the stairs. I tried to resist, but she was stronger, and I was scared of hurting the baby. "Get your hands off me," I cried, but she just dragged harder. Patricia was right behind us, yelling at me to move faster. My heart was racing. This couldn't be happening. This had to be a nightmare. They forced me to throw some clothes into a suitcase. I was crying so hard I could barely see what I was grabbing. Then Melissa dragged me back down the stairs and Gregory opened the front door wide. It was bright afternoon, around 2 o'clock. The sun was shining, neighbors were out walking, doing yard work. They were about to humiliate me in front of everyone. Melissa threw my suitcase down the front steps. It burst open on impact and my clothes scattered across the lawn. I stumbled down the steps trying to gather my things, but Melissa kicked more clothes onto the grass. I was on my hands and knees, pregnant belly making it so hard to reach anything, and Patricia started screaming loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. "You trapped my son with that baby. You're nothing but a gold-digging leech. This is what happens to girls who try to marry above their station." I looked up and saw neighbors stopping to stare. Some had their phones out, recording. Others were whispering behind their hands. The shame burned through me like fire. I've never felt so small, so worthless, so completely alone. Through my tears, I managed to stuff my clothes back into the broken suitcase. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely close it. When I finally stood up, my legs felt like they might give out. Gregory's voice cut through the air one last time. "If you're not gone in 5 minutes, I'm calling the police and telling them you're trespassing." Then the door slammed shut, and I heard the lock click. I stood there in the afternoon sun, pregnant, homeless, and humiliated. I could feel every eye on me as I dragged my broken suitcase down the street. My face was burning with shame, but I kept walking. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away from those stares, those whispers, those people recording my worst moment. I found a bus stop and collapsed onto the bench. My whole body was shaking. I pulled out my phone and tried calling Ethan. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again. Nothing. I called his office and the assistant said he was unreachable during negotiations. The panic started setting in. I was alone, completely alone. I couldn't call my parents. They struggled so much to raise me, worked so hard in their little shop. How could I tell them I'd been thrown out like garbage? How could I burden them when they barely had enough for themselves? I checked my bank account. $247. That was all I had in the world. I used my phone to find the cheapest motel nearby. $45 per night. I did the math in my head. 5 days. I had enough money for maybe 5 days, and then what? I took the bus to the motel, and people stared at my tear-stained face and disheveled appearance. I wanted to disappear. The motel room was tiny and smelled like old cigarettes and mold. The carpet had stains I didn't want to think about, but it had a bed and a door that locked, and that was all I needed. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself completely break down. I cried until my throat hurt and my eyes were swollen. I cried for my baby, for my shattered life, for the family I thought I had. The next few days were a blur of desperation. I kept trying to reach Ethan, but his phone stayed off. I ate cheap instant noodles to save money and watched my bank account drop lower and lower. By day 3, my morning sickness was worse from all the stress, but I couldn't afford to see a doctor. I walked to a free clinic and waited for hours just to be told that the baby was okay, but I needed to reduce my stress levels. I almost laughed. How was I supposed to reduce stress when I was homeless and running out of money? On day 5, when I had only $89 left, I got a voicemail. My heart jumped thinking it might be Ethan, but it was Patricia's voice, cold and cruel. "Stop trying to contact our son. He doesn't want you anymore. You are just a distraction. Accept it and move on with your bastard child." I sat on that disgusting motel bed and felt something inside me break. They didn't just kick me out, They wanted to destroy me completely. The next morning, day 6 of my nightmare, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. A professional male voice said, "Is this Mrs. Jenny Williams?" I confirmed it was. "I'm calling from Sterling International Holdings. We need you to come to our headquarters today at 2 p.m. It's regarding your husband, Mr. Ethan Williams. A car will pick you up from your location in 1 hour." I was so confused. Sterling International? That was one of the biggest companies in the country. What did they have to do with Ethan? But I was desperate for any information, so I agreed. Exactly 1 hour later, a luxury car pulled up to my shabby motel. The driver, in a professional suit, treated me with more respect than I'd received in months. "Mrs. Williams, please come with me." He drove me downtown to this massive skyscraper, 72 floors of glass and steel, with Sterling International across the top. A security team was waiting for me at the entrance like I was someone important. They escorted me to a private elevator that went straight to the top floor. My heart was pounding. Nothing made sense. The elevator doors opened to the most beautiful office I'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. And standing there, behind a massive desk, was Ethan. But he didn't look like my Ethan. He was wearing an expensive tailored suit, his hair styled differently, and he had this commanding presence I'd never seen before. The nameplate on his desk read CEO ETHANWILLIAMS. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "Ethan! What is this?" His face was filled with guilt and relief when he saw me. "Jenny, I'm so sorry. Please, sit down. I need to explain everything." And then he told me the truth that changed everything. Ethan wasn't just some employee at a family company. He was the founder and CEO of Sterling International. He built it from nothing starting at age 22. He was worth over $3 billion. Billion. With a B. He owned properties and businesses all over the world. And the Williams family? They weren't even his real parents. They were distant cousins. Years ago, he felt sorry for them and let them live in one of his properties. He gave Gregory a position managing a small subsidiary company. They thought they were wealthy, living their fancy lifestyle. But everything they had, every single thing, came from Ethan. The house, the cars, their positions, their country club membership, all of it was his. He kept his real identity secret because he was tired of people wanting him for his money. He wanted to find someone who loved him for who he was, not what he had. When he met me in college, I loved the quiet, kind boy who bought me coffee and made me laugh. I never knew, never suspected. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I wanted to be sure," he said. "I wanted to know it was real." Then his face went pale. "But Jenny, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for days." That's when I told him everything. How his so-called family threw me out. How I'd been living in a motel for 6 days. How they called our baby a bastard. How they humiliated me in front of the entire neighborhood. With every word, I watched his face change. The guilt turned to anger, then to something cold and dangerous. He showed me reports from his personal assistant, the one who was supposed to check on me daily. Every single report said, "Checked on Mrs. Williams, everything fine." All lies. The assistant never visited once. Ethan fired him the moment he landed and couldn't reach me. He'd hired private investigators to find me. "I've been losing my mind," he said, and I could hear the pain in his voice. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I should have protected you better." I wanted to be angry at him for keeping secrets, but looking at his face I could see how much he was hurting too. "They threw out my pregnant wife like garbage," he said, his voice deadly calm. "They humiliated you. They called our child a bastard. They don't get to walk away from this." He looked at me with determination I'd never seen before. "Trust me one more time. Let me make this right." I looked at the man I married, really looked at him, and I saw both the gentle college boy I fell in love with and this powerful man who could change lives with a single decision. "Okay," I whispered, "make it right." The next morning, Patricia, Gregory, and Melissa received an urgent email about an emergency board meeting at Sterling International headquarters. They showed up in their finest clothes, full of arrogance, probably thinking they were about to get some kind of recognition or deal. They were shown to a massive conference room on the 72nd floor. When Ethan walked in with me beside him, both of us dressed professionally and powerfully. Their jaws literally dropped. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" Patricia stammered. "And what is she doing here?" Ethan sat at the head of the table and his voice was ice cold. "I'm here as the founder and CEO of Sterling International. I own Williams' subsidiary. I own everything." The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. He opened a folder and started showing documents, proof that he owned their house, their cars, their positions, even their country club membership was on his corporate account. Everything they thought was theirs was actually his. "Gregory isn't my father," Ethan said calmly. "He's my third cousin. I felt sorry for you years ago and gave you opportunities, and you repaid me by torturing my wife." Then he played the security footage. Everything was caught on camera. Patricia screaming at me, Melissa dragging me, them throwing my belongings onto the lawn. Patricia's voice on the recording, "Gold-digging leech." The audio of her voicemail calling our baby a bastard. They couldn't deny it. The proof was right there. Ethan's voice stayed calm, but I could feel the fury underneath. "Effective immediately. You're all removed from your positions. You have 48 hours to vacate the property. You'll be moved to a company apartment, 800 square feet. You'll receive $3,000 per month combined as basic severance." Melissa actually gasped. 800 square feet? Patricia looked like she might faint. Gregory tried to speak. "Please, we made a mistake." But Ethan cut him off. "You made a choice. Now live with the consequences. Your cars will be returned. You'll use public transportation. Funny how you expected Jenny to live on nothing, but $3,000 a month isn't enough for you." Then it was my turn. I stood up and walked to their side of the table. Patricia looked up at me, her mascara running down her face. I spoke softly but firmly. "You made me feel worthless every single day. You mocked my parents who worked hard to raise me with love. You kicked me out while I was carrying your grandchild. I didn't marry Ethan for money. I didn't even know he had any. But you? You lived off his money while calling me the gold digger. The only leeches in this room are you three." Melissa started sobbing. I continued, "I hope in your small apartment working real jobs for the first time in your lives, you learn what real life feels like, what it's like to struggle, to worry, to feel small. Maybe then you'll become actual human beings." I walked back to Ethan's side, and we left together, hand in hand, leaving them sitting in their shame and shattered dreams. 3 months later, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. We named her Hope, because even in my darkest moment, she gave me hope. Ethan was by my side through every contraction, every push, every tear. When they placed her in my arms, I looked at this perfect tiny human and knew that everything I went through was worth it to get to this moment. My parents flew in to meet their granddaughter. When my father held Hope for the first time, he cried. "You chose well, daughter," he told me. He'd finally met the real Ethan, and he could see how much my husband loved us. 2 weeks after Hope was born, a letter arrived. It was from Patricia, several pages long, handwritten, an apology. She described their new life in the small apartment, working real jobs for the first time. Patricia as a receptionist, Melissa as a store clerk, Gregory doing bookkeeping. She wrote about how humbling it was, how much it opened her eyes. She didn't expect forgiveness, but asked if she could meet her granddaughter. Ethan and I talked about it for a long time. "It's your choice," he said. "They hurt you most." I looked at Hope sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. "I don't want her growing up with hate," I said, "or without knowing where she comes from, but I won't let them hurt her either." We decided to allow supervised visits with strict boundaries, one chance to prove they'd changed. If they messed up even once, they were done. "You're more forgiving than I could be," Ethan said. "I'm not forgiving for them," I replied. "I'm forgiving for me." Carrying anger is like drinking poison and expecting them to die. Now, sitting here in Hope's nursery, holding my daughter close, I think about everything that happened. 6 months ago, I was broken, thrown away like I was nothing, made to believe I was worthless. But here's what I learned. My worth was never determined by how they treated me. I wasn't kicked out because I wasn't good enough. I was kicked out because they weren't good enough. Sometimes people project their own insecurities onto you. They felt small inside, so they made me feel smaller. But you know what? The universe has balance. What you put out comes back. They threw away someone precious and learned too late. Now they're learning humility the hard way, working regular jobs, living in a tiny apartment, taking the bus. And me? I found my strength in my weakest moment. I discovered that my value doesn't come from money, status, or how others treat me. It comes from who I am inside, the love I give, the person I choose to be. If you're going through something similar right now, please remember this. What you're experiencing is temporary, but your worth is permanent. Never let anyone make you feel less than you are, because one day, the truth always comes out. And karma? She never forgets an address. So that's my story. From being dragged out of a mansion to holding my beautiful daughter in my own home. From being called worthless to knowing my true value. If this story moved you, if you believe in karma and justice, hit that like button hard. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you have forgiven them? Or would you have made them suffer more? And if you love stories where the underdog wins and bullies get what they deserve, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications because I share real stories about real consequences. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they matter, that their worth isn't defined by how others treat them. Thank you for being here with me today. Remember, you are valuable, you are worthy, and you are loved. Until next time, this is Jenny, reminding you that sometimes the best revenge is simply knowing your worth.